Good day, everyone. Welcome to thermal imaging for virtual screening and enhanced analysis. The gradual reopening of workplaces presents an opportunity to establish a new way of working for both employees and customers. Organizations must create a safe working environment that gives everyone the confidence to return to the work premises, and as well as be able to adjust to the new virtual and physical hybrid way of working. By utilizing artificial intelligence and thermography, Dell and NVIDIA have developed a platform to deliver that solution, and we'll be getting into some insights over the next 40 minutes. My name is Benita Morty, and I am a strategist for AI and IoT at Dell Technologies. Your panelists for the session today are Anthony Laskowski from NVIDIA, as well as Wayne Arvidson from Dell. All participants are muted, so please leave your questions in the Q&A box below. Let's get on to the show. So Tony and Wayne, would you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do at both NVIDIA and Dell, respectively?
Sure. Excuse me. Hello, everybody. Tony Laskowski here. I'm from NVIDIA. I'm a developer relations manager, which means I look after our direct relationships with all of the software companies that are developing solutions on our platforms. And in addition to that, we try to make sure that our partners have all the tools they need to kind of build the best solutions possible. And part of that is linking them on every step along the chain from inception of an idea to then partnerships with great companies like Dell, and then finally a solution to an end customer that actually makes a real difference. So we've been working closely with Dell for several years, and I've been originally from the startup space, now working at NVIDIA, and I've been working closely with the Dell team since then. So thank you for the invitation, guys.
Great, thanks, Tony. I'm Wayne Arvidson. I head up the Global Partner and Industries Office here at Dell. We're responsible for identifying key ISVs and driving them through to solution. Currently, we focus on 5 key vertical markets, those being energy and utilities, healthcare and life sciences, manufacturing, retail, and safety and security. We also integrate tightly with our telco team here at Dell. The other part of our responsibility is we manage the relationship with key technology partners such as NVIDIA, and so thank you for having me as well.
Thank you both. So Wayne, could you start us off by giving us a brief overview of how Dell and NVIDIA work together to create solutions like thermal vision?
Sure, be happy to do that. So we have a pretty extensive set of lab capabilities as a team, and it all starts with the relationship with a technology partner like NVIDIA. So we have a cooperative lab that's in the NVIDIA facility in Santa Clara. It's stocked with Dell equipment, and what we do is it works in conjunction with our Dell validation lab to the same test processes. And we bring in key partners when we find them into this lab. So, we're mainly focused on real-time video analytics, in this particular facility. So they come in, there's compatibility testing that's done, and then NVIDIA provides developer services for those partners to help them optimize their code utilizing the Dell platform and the NVIDIA GPU cards. Once that solution is optimized, they're also doing testing for things like, how many camera channels can we support? They're getting sizing information, performance data, CPU, GPU, memory utilization, things like that. Those tools and that output feeds into the Dell validation labs. So we've got 4 validation labs. We've got Bangalore, Limerick. We have a facility in Nashua, New Hampshire, and then another one in Raleigh, Durham. There, what they do is they do, the benchmark testing, and that drives the sizing tool, which is pretty critical, because when you get into these real-time video analytics types of applications, you've got to make sure that the system can handle the bandwidth that you've got coming in, based on the amount of video data and the resolution of the video data. So we do that. We also do a process we call test to fail. So we introduce that in so we can see what the resiliency factors are, so that the sizing guide provides the right information as we design solutions for systems. From there, it goes to our innovation labs, where they create both virtual and real demos for our briefing centers. And then we've got 3, soon to be 4 POC labs located throughout the globe, where if a customer wants to bring in their own data or get some stick time with the application, they can do that as well. And one of the key outputs of this process has been a platform that is called Metropolis.
Awesome. Thanks, Wayne. Tony, can you tell us a bit more about the Metropolis platform?
Yeah, I sure can. So Metropolis, as its name implies, it's traditionally kind of been our smart city vertical, so to speak. So we've been focused on anything that's in the public space, really. However, some of the technologies that we've developed and this platform that we've developed has actually become so widely applicable that we're actually bringing in some kind of cross-vertical pollination here, because we've seen so much success. Essentially, there are several layers of our offering. At the very base level, we have obviously our GPUs. But as I mentioned, we've tried to kind of add value to every step in the chain, so that our partners developing solutions are producing the best possible solutions and providing the most value to their end customers. So we have a number of different kind of software stacks that help that happen. At the very base level, we have the CUDA level, we have the kind of Kubernetes and orchestration level of software. But then at a higher level, the kind of more intelligent video analytics, as we call it, or real-time video analytics, as Dell calls it, we have the Metropolis SDKs and tools. One of them is DeepStream, for example. It basically lifts the bar for all of our partners to optimize the development of their software using pipelines that have been optimized for our GPUs. And so we work very closely with our partners to increase that stream density, because overall, by being able to fit more streams per GPU, it's overall providing way more value to the end customers and to the software producers that are producing it as well. And so that's kind of what we're doing. As Wayne mentioned, the Metropolis labs are all about introducing a level of standardization in what we see as a very fragmented market. There are so many different hardware options out there. There are so many different software vendors out there. It's a dynamic, exciting space, but there are so many different players in the ecosystem. So we said, let's take the model of the smartphone and pick a standard SKU of hardware, and that's why we chose the Dell R740. It fits up to from 2 to 6 T4s. And essentially, we said to our partners, come in, containerize your applications, and test how they utilize those resources. So we have some level of predictability in terms of how they'll perform. So when you're being a spec'd project, you have some level of confidence that you've got the right hardware for the job. And so in addition to that, the whole cloud native movement, as it's called, is Kubernetes, which basically allows several different Metropolis certified applications to be running on the same bank of hardware. So all of a sudden, we now have a much simpler management system to deal with several different applications, because not one provider cannot possibly provide every solution for a given project. If you imagine a smart city or a large airport or something like that.
Right. Thanks, Tony. You talked about a number of different use cases and solutions, and the one that we're here to talk about today is thermal vision. So can you give us a brief overview of what thermal vision is?
Sure. So, I mean, thermal vision as a sensor has been around for a long time. I mean, if we kind of trace back to even the last pandemic that existed, the SARS crisis, there are a bunch of thermal sensors out there kind of helping to scan people. But why it's becoming extra exciting right now in our current crisis is that we also now have this incredible power of AI. And so what we're seeing now is a convergence of AI technology with also a pretty advanced thermal sensing now in combination to provide a really effective and seamless way to kind of help control and monitor this situation, not only during this crisis time, but in the future when we're kind of back in operation and being on much higher alert for a situation like this breaking out and kind of containing it before it gets out of hand. And so in a nutshell, what it involves is a force multiplier between the thermal sensing and AI to basically detect, automatically detect shapes and patterns in images and be able to seamlessly make those measurements without having to kind of stop and start people too much.
All right, so Wayne, did you have anything to add? Because Tony's talked a little bit about the new additional capabilities to the technology that has already been in place. So what other insights can you add in terms of what's new and why there's some additional interest to using thermal vision today?
So, I think as Tony alluded to, the big difference here is the incorporation of AI technology into the stack. And again, it's one of the reasons why we think the plateau of where thermal vision is going to be, is going to have some longevity. Probably, if you think about what's going on in the macro environment, outside of finding a vaccine for COVID, probably the key driver that we're seeing is, people's need to return to work and return to site and for businesses to reopen. So, is with the integration of, there's a lot of other type of sensor technology. There's an increased use or expansion of safety and security infrastructures within facilities and smart facilities. So, this return to work, return to site, the need in areas like transportation to provide a higher level of people that can go through screening. That's really what's driving this new use case. There's also going to be compliance issues, right? There's certainly in where I'm living in Arizona, you're required to have a mask to go into almost any retail store or public facility, and so AI can aid in things like that. But the key driver right now is this return to work, return to site, reopening. That's driving it from a use case perspective.
All right, yeah, I can definitely testify to having to wear a mask everywhere I go personally these days. So it looks like we're adding thermal vision we're adding AI to thermal vision, and there are a number of things that we found that customers are looking for when it comes to capabilities on top of these solutions. So could you tell us a bit more about what those capabilities look like and what customers are looking for, Wayne?
Sure, absolutely. I think that the key thing is, they're looking to keep their employees and their facilities safe. So, they're certainly looking for ways to identify social distancing. Do people have a mask on? Do they keep the mask on during the course of the day? And, things like, contact tracing. So if somebody is to test positive, especially in like a company environment, if somebody is to test positive, do we know who they worked with? Do we know what rooms they were in? Do we know who they interacted with? They're looking for features like that. The other thing we hear consistently from customers is there's a concern that because of this situation, they're going to have to add additional personnel in order to carry out this preliminary screening or identification process. And so they're really looking for automation as much as possible. So how do I minimize the amount of people that I need to hire to, work my entrances, how do I ensure smooth flow in and out of my building? So, automation is a key factor. And then, certainly one of the more important ones is it's about, not just speed, because I want to be able to get as many people into the facility as possible, but it's also about accuracy. Accuracy is a really important criteria, in this scenario where we're identifying folks that may be at risk or of a concern as they enter a facility. We certainly want to make sure that we're identifying them correctly.
All right, thanks, Wayne. So that all makes a lot of sense. And when it comes to what these solutions could actually look like, can you tell us more about key components of the solution?
Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to do that. So it really starts with the sensor, right? And so as Tony had mentioned in his introduction to thermal vision, right? It's about some type of thermographic sensor. Now, in the solution that we've come up with, what we're using a device that's a combination thermographic camera and optical camera. So it has the two sensors included in the same housing. And again, that's important because people, they don't want to have a bunch of different devices to manage. So the fact that this could, replace a camera that's already in existence in a lobby, for example, and get the dual use out of it is important. On the sensor itself, we've got an ambient temperature sensor, which is important because that means that the unit can self-calibrate. You can use what's called a black body device, which is a reference device that would sit somewhere about 10 feet away from the camera. That's optional, but with this particular units we've chosen to work with, you've got the ambient sensor in there. Speaker and microphone may not seem real exotic, but going back to the customer requirements of automation, the ability to communicate with somebody, because we're seeing these things interface into other systems. So for example, if somebody was detected as being over temperature, maybe you've got it connected to your access control system, and their badge is going to be disabled. So you'd want to be able to communicate with them and explain why that happened. This sensor, as Tony mentioned, there's a lot of other use cases, certainly in industrial and manufacturing, for example. So this particular camera is good from -40 to positive 550 degrees centigrade, so it can be used in a wide range of environments. And as I mentioned, accuracy is really tantamount. So this is accurate to within 1/10 of a degree centigrade as far as the measurement accuracy. So the solution consists of the sensor. Then we've got the the platform that we mentioned. On that platform, we're running an application from Deep Vision. It's Deep Vision AI. They were one of the early solutions that we brought through the Metropolis lab. They're doing the AI aspect of it. What we're doing is we're doing facial detection. And that's an important point because when somebody is walking into a facility, we want to make sure we're measuring the correct item, right? Not that I'm coming in and I got my hot cup of coffee from wherever, and we're measuring that temperature. So what we do is we use the AI software to do facial detection. That isolates the facial region within the thermal scan. And then furthermore, within that thermal scan, we're identifying 4 key areas. So the forehead, the eyes, nasal passage, the mouth, because those are places where we're going to get the most accurate reading. So then in addition to the AI software, then we've also got a management layer on there that can do things like device management, integrate in other IoT sensors, provides a rules engine for setting up the workflow that you're going to use, and provides interface information into other applications that might get developed.
All right, that's great. So it sounds like the platform, the solution, it all has extended capabilities and can be, you can add to it, you can start basic and then grow as you go. So can you tell us more about the implementation? And Tony, you can chime in too. How are customers implementing what's available from the solution stack?
Yeah, so to start with, the thing that we're seeing is people are integrating this into the rest of their infrastructure. So typically what we see in these use cases is they're interfacing it in with the rest of their safety and security infrastructure. Generally, they're connecting it up to a PSIM or an integrated operations center, certainly access control. We are seeing things like other, other applications interface. Like for example, one customer we talked to, they're asking their employees to fill out a health survey. Basically, in the morning before you come in, how are you feeling? Have you had these symptoms? That app generates a QR code when they come in. The QR code can be scanned along with their thermal scan, creates an anonymized token, and then interfaces into the access control system. So, we're certainly seeing integration with things like that, as well as, other aspects of smart building stuff. And Tony, I'm not sure if there's other things that you've seen.
Sure. I mean, just one point on that, the fact that there are already existing security systems out there, for example, with their own VMS and all of that kind of stuff. So the idea of kind of going back to what I was talking about with our joint efforts and the Metropolis certification and NVIDIA and Dell certification, the ability to run multiple applications on the one platform, the one bank of hardware, means that potentially the thermal solution, while it could run on a standalone unit, can also run on a bank of hardwares, on a bank of hardware devices in a kind of local server environment or on-prem server. But in terms of the applications, obviously the direct ones in healthcare are quite valid. By that I mean healthcare facilities, the retail environment, allowing people to go out and about. And even if we kind of think outside the box here, we have a really high quality thermal sensor with AI capabilities. That could mean huge things for infrastructure management, for energy and utilities, industrial applications, and even in the smart buildings. If we look at it from an environmental and energy efficiency perspective, in the kind of traditional days of IoT, it was about embedding tiny thermal sensors around different distributed parts of a room or an office space, building space. But now if you have a thermal sensor via the kind of thermal camera, you can actually see a whole snapshot in one go, and using AI help optimize the energy utilization of that building. So there are many different applications as this kind of pandemic comes under control.
Yeah, and those are good points, Tony, especially on the smart building side. So things like, using, once you've got it integrated, using it for things like people counting. If you had an emergency, did the same amount of people exit the building as came in? How many people are entering a conference room, for example, right? If the company has a policy of masks, because this can do object detection, you can see things like mask adherence. The person come through, go through the lobby with their mask on, and then the mask comes off later in the day. Can alert people about that. Social distancing, right? Both from the perspective of the physical measurement, as well as, again, using like the conference room example, how many people can be in this given square footage and still comply with social distancing regulations. So, AI, again, enables all of that to happen, right? So it's about a workflow that's much more than detecting a temperature. And, generally what we're seeing, from an implementation perspective too, people are setting a temperature threshold. They're not interested in the individual temperature of somebody. What they do is they'll set a threshold, typically 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit is what we've seen, because that's kind of the indication that somebody has some type of requirement for secondary screening, and then it just flags. They're either green and they pass, or they're red and, like I said, interfacing into things like access control or whatever the workflow is happens
Right.
as a follow-on.
And just one more thing that just came to mind, and that is the fact that realistically, the way we see office spaces is completely changing now. The fact that many of us can still work very well from home, and the visit to the office is no longer going to be seen as essential, but rather as like a kind of value-added experience, and that will rethink the way we use architecture and office spaces in general, which means that data gathering exercise of people counting and even heat maps, excuse the analogy of heat maps there, but kind of the use of spaces is going to be quite important.
Yeah. And this is, I think, the new reality, right? I mean, a lot of customers that we're talking to are, saying, once this particular issue is resolved, why wouldn't I want to know that somebody's got an elevated temperature coming into the facility, right? I mean, that could impact my productivity, and, it may be the new normal. Little did we think that, taking our shoes off and, not being able to carry liquids on a plane was going to be normal, but it's just an accepted practice these days.
Great, thanks. That's very insightful. You guys mentioned specs, camera specs, and a couple of things when it comes to accuracy of the solution. Can you tell us a bit more about why that's important?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no shortage of solutions out in the marketplace. I was talking to a customer a couple of weeks ago, and they were telling me they've been contacted by no less than 167 different companies claiming to have a thermal vision solution. So a couple of key points, right? One is, since this is the first part of my screening process, trying to identify folks that I may want to have some secondary screening or testing done, the accuracy is really important, right? The quality of the device is really important. As I mentioned, the devices that we're using are accurate to within 1/10 of a degree centigrade. There's a lot of devices out there that most of the ones we've seen that are in the lower cost category are 0.3 to 0.5. So if you think about, I'm trying to reopen my business, I'm trying to get my employees back into the facility, or I'm trying to reopen my retail or entertainment location and generate revenue, the idea of that gap between 0.1 degrees centigrade and 0.3 degrees centigrade even, that's a large percentage of people that I may end up not letting into my facility. So that has an impact on my productivity. That has an impact on my revenue. So I definitely, want to be, concerned about the accuracy of the device, since this is the first part of my my screening process. The flip side is true too. What happens if I don't spot someone, and now I've put my facility at risk, my customers at risk, or I run into a situation where now I've got to shut down the facility because perhaps somebody that I could have identified with an elevated temperature that we would have, asked to, be involved in some secondary screening, got in the facility and then, worked their way around. So, while it, there's a higher cost for the higher accuracy, I think when people think about it from a productivity perspective, an impact on revenue perspective, a remediation cost perspective, it is important to invest in something that is got a high level of accuracy and a high level of integration.
Awesome. Tony, did you have anything to add?
I mean, it's definitely a space that that we're focusing very heavily on. As I mentioned, the focus to get these solutions out there and be installed with as great ease as possible is our #1 goal. And so, yeah, we're just continuing to kind of make sure that we are supporting all of our partners in the best way we can to produce those solutions and make the kind of collaboration between the different use cases as easy as possible.
And speaking of use cases and partnering, while we have focused on returning to work as a very timely use case, thermal vision has been around for a while. So can you guys speak to any other applications that this technology can also support?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on it a little earlier, but basically a scenario where you're able to monitor the health of a given system. I know with kind of energy and utilities, that's a very important data point. Obviously, any thermal changes are one of the earliest signs of something going wrong. And so being able to use AI for that with the thermal sensor, in addition to other AI technologies, all integrated in that kind of one space, is quite powerful. And in the kind of smart building space, with access control, the use of those resources, as well as the use of energy for those resources, it's going to become quite important to have very high detailed data points in order to make the best planning decisions and architectural decisions moving forward. And so, I mean, what we're dealing with now is this kind of realm that public safety and public health have now kind of converged into the one space. And it's quite exciting. I actually think that this has been a long time coming. I mean, we've heard talks from people like Bill Gates kind of warning us of something like this. So it's a good time for us to kind of implement all of these solutions that probably should have been implemented earlier than this. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of additional kind of industries where thermal sensing with AI can be very powerful.
Yeah, and to that point, Tony, you know, for example, you know, one of the early customers we talked to was in the mining space, and you know, they were going to use this for employee screening, and then, you know, when they thought about it, they realized, they're like, well, would this be able to look at the bearing temperature on the conveyors we have? And it does. And so, you know, their application then extended because, you know, from a predictive maintenance perspective, they're like, if we can see this conveyor, which is moving all the material through the mine, if we can see hot spots, a bearing operating at a higher temperature than other bearings, then we know when it's time, you know, when we shut it down, we can go do preventative maintenance on that and keep more productive from that perspective. In retail, we've got people, you know, they're not only using it for the employee entrance, but they're using it in their logistics centers, right? Or they're using it, you know, at the back of the store. You know, a delivery comes in, it's, you know, some type of, you know, produce or, you know, goods that require refrigeration, right? One of the things that with the combination of AI and thermography you can do, you know, you can see when that thing's been delivered. It can monitor the temperature. Again, you could set a threshold that says, you know, if this pallet's sitting here and it reaches temperature X, send an alert to the store manager because that stuff's got to get into the, you know, the refrigerated area or it's got to get unpacked. You can also see, you know, things like, you know, as Tony was mentioning, especially in energy and utilities, one of the ways they detect erosion in pipelines is especially around the bends in the pipe. The temperature will get hotter there as the pipe wears. So again, from a predictive maintenance perspective, you combine the thermographic data with AI data, with your maintenance data, with other sensors, like sensors that are on pumps or, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. And that combination allows you to keep your facility much more productive as well as safe.
Nice. Thank you both for the, oh, go ahead, Tony.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I was originally in the kind of power industry, and I mean, substation monitoring, power plant monitoring, that's all very sensitive to temperature as well. So just another.
Yeah, another good example. Yep.
Nice. All right. Thank you both. That's been very informative and insightful. We want to open it up to Q&A now. For anyone that has any questions, please feel free to either drop your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen if you have anything.
Okay, looks like a wrap.
Don't see any questions. Well, if there are no questions, then Wayne, Tony, do you have any? Oh, yes. We do have a question from Andrew. Could you tell us how customers and anyone who's on and listening can engage with us moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, Dell, our partner in industries office, we have subject matter experts in key vertical markets. Certainly encourage you to reach out to your Dell account manager or your NVIDIA account manager in order to engage those resources. That's probably the best place to start with. There is information up on our website. There's an Edge and IoT page. There's a safety and security page where these solutions are discussed. From the NVIDIA perspective, Tony, I don't know if there was additional information.
Yeah, so basically we have our kind of Metropolis landing page, which kind of describes how we engage with our different partners. I'm the DevRel, so in terms of trying to find out about the kind of solutions that we can help with, and the way we engage with Dell, you can always reach out to me, a.laskowski@nvidia.com. But yeah, I mean, we work very closely with Dell to bring our partners to the end customers, and then kind of provide a kind of solid, useful end installation. Yeah, please do reach out. We're also happy to advise when it comes to kind of architecture choices and things like that. So I mentioned that we've got everything certified on the Dell R740. That can be applied up in the cloud. It can be applied right on the edge. There are many different kind of scenarios there. And I mean, an exciting one that I'd like everybody to know about is the kind of the dawn of the whole 5G network. And what we're looking to do is get devices such as the Dell R740 with our T4s at the base station. So it's a different architecture of streaming that information. It's a different business model, different consumption model. It's all very exciting right now.
Yeah, and I think it brings up another point, Tony, and that's the integrator community. So both of us work very closely with value-added resellers and integrators. We're working with a lot of the major integrators on the thermal vision solution itself. They've developed some pretty unique applications for their customers. They also have a lot of expertise around the workflow, including the HR and legal and compliance components of it. So feel free to reach out to your integration partner as well. Most likely they're working with us on this thermal vision program. Great,
thank you. And I'll add one more thing. Everyone will receive a survey with the option to request a meeting and design session with the team. So once you do get that survey, please select yes so that we can get engaged with you guys. We do have one more question as well. Can anyone use thermal vision in server cooling?
Yeah, you could certainly put a thermographic sensor. You know, in a data center, generally there's safety and security cameras in there already. So replacing one with one of these dual use devices, and then interfacing it into the rest of the safety and security infrastructure. And again, look for, setting temperature thresholds. Absolutely a use case that could be supported.
Awesome. Thank you. We don't have any more questions, so I think we can go to wrap. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. The recordings for all the different sessions today will be available on the same landing page you registered with. So just go back there from tomorrow morning. And then again, a survey will come out within 24 hours to please give us your feedback. We'd love to hear how we can make these sessions better for you guys. And then also, if you are interested in learning more about the thermal visioning solution we've talked about today, please fill out yes to receiving more information about getting signed up for a design session. We appreciate the feedback and thank you again for joining. We will look forward to working with you guys soon.
Excellent. Thanks for hosting,
Thanks, everyone.
Benita.
Yeah. Thanks, Benita.